All right, this is a very sensitive subject, and I'm going to try to deal with it delicately. Not something I normally speak about publicly. It's more of a one-on-one conversation, but I've had the conversation one-on-one so many times, I feel like it's worth putting it out there. And that is when a parent will call me with concern about their child seeing inappropriate things, or either they were exposed to inappropriate things or they're actively now seeking out inappropriate things through technology, usually. So let me try to have this conversation with you, even though we're not actually speaking. But, for the parent who at 3 in the morning is desperately looking for answers, maybe this will at least start the conversation, and then you can follow up, not necessarily with me, but with a friend, a mentor, someone you trust. Okay, so let's start the conversation here. So you found your child is involved in inappropriate, let's say, watching inappropriate sites. Okay, so first of all, welcome to 2025. Unfortunately, the reality is that today, even in the most sheltered communities, in the most sheltered homes, even where they do not have technology in the home, because technology is so ubiquitous, it's pretty much, I don't want to say a number because this is not based on a study or anything, but anecdotally, I'll just say it's not 100%, but it's pretty close to that. Before they're 10 years old, almost all children today are going to be at least exposed to inappropriate images. And the question is not, therefore, how do we protect them from it? Because it's like virtually impossible. Like I said, even in the most sheltered home, the most sheltered communities where they literally do not have technology in the homes, and yet children are still exposed to these things, usually by their peers, by other children. So it's not a question of how do I protect my child from being exposed to it. The real good, responsible parenting question is, how do I protect my child's mental, emotional, spiritual safety, integrity, wholeness when they are exposed to it, which inevitably they will be? And how do I prepare them so that when they are exposed to it, it's something that they will be able to separate themselves from and not become a habit? Because that's very common, where the first time is by accident or even against the child's will. Like somebody says, hey, let me show you something. The child is even like, oh, don't show me that. And then very quickly, in a matter of time, it's like, oh, let me see that again, And then they start looking for it. So what can you do for your child that they will be strong enough to not be pulled into this world, which really does pull people in? It pulls people in fast. It pulls people in deep. God forbid, but we see it constantly. So the first thing I want to tell you is about shame. Shame is the number one thing to be aware of. And it's counterintuitive, perhaps counterintuitive, but the more shame surrounds these issues, the more likely a child, or an adult for that matter, is to be pulled deeply into this dark world. Now, you're going to say, why would that be? If a person has shame, then it's a negative feeling. They'll resist it. They'll get away from it. The shame will drive them away from it. But like I told you already, first of all, drive them away from it. It's an inevitability. They're going to be exposed at some point. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in. So the question is, when they are exposed, what are they going to do with that? How are they going to process that experience in a productive way that's going to lead to making good choices afterwards? The problem with shame is shame goes hand in hand with secrecy. When I've done something that I'm ashamed of, I don't tell anyone. I certainly don't tell people who I respect, like my parents, or the first people I actually really should be telling, because they can guide me, right? But no, I don't tell them. Maybe I tell no one. And then what happens is I'm operating in shame, secrecy, isolation. I don't have my reality check anymore. I'm not checking in with anybody. And then it's very easy at that point to go far off into the wrong direction and not even realize what's happening, because you're just not getting feedback from anybody. So that's the first thing to realize, that when we remove the shame from it, then we create the possibility that the child is going to be able to discuss it with you, or at least with someone who's responsible, and get some guidance. That's one thing to understand. Another thing to understand is, and this is also counterintuitive, there's a shame spiral. When a person feels bad, they often look for comfort. Well, what causes you to feel bad? Shame. Shame makes you feel bad. I'm a lowlife. I'm a pervert. I'm twisted and broken and the only one who is into these things, right? So that's not a good feeling. What are you going to do? You're going to soothe that. You're going to placate that. How are you going to do that? You look for comfort. You look for distraction. Well, you're already feeling low about yourself, so you don't have a particularly high opinion of yourself. And so what's at hand? What's nearby? What's accessible? The very thing that you were feeling ashamed of in the first place, and then you use that to soothe the negative feeling of the shame. And then what happens? Oh, now I'm really ashamed. Downward spiral. And it becomes, God forbid, but it becomes this vicious cycle which is so hard to break. Like the worse I feel about it, then the more I go and I distract myself by doing more of it. So that's the second reason why the shame is so counterproductive. So we have to remove the shame. All right. But on the other hand, you'll give me pushback, and you should give me pushback and say, we're going to completely remove the shame. Then we should become shameless. Then we should just pretend it's all good. Yeah, for sure. Look at whatever you want. It's all beautiful. It's all great. It's all nice, right? By the way, I mean, I'm saying it with like a sort of, I'm saying it in a joking way, but there is such a school of thought, and it's not as prevalent today, but certainly in my lifetime, that was somewhat of a mainstream attitude toward teaching children about sexuality, where it was absolutely no restrictions, no barriers. Teach them everything openly. It's just a normal thing. Okay. That's also wrong. That's also wrong. But what do? Like, on one hand, we have shame and secrecy. On the other hand, we have like this blasé permissiveness. Neither of those are healthy. So we have to understand that there's a difference between something that's a secret and something that's private. A secret is something that I'm hiding from you. I don't want you to find out. That's my secret. Something that's private is something that I choose to share with people who I'm close with. You see, that's very, very different. A secret is something I'm hiding. Something that's private is something that I'm selectively sharing. I don't share it with everybody. It's private. And by sharing it with the people that I share it with, that's a special bond that I have with them. Something that's private. So secrecy drives a wedge, creates isolation. Privacy actually creates deeper bonds, but with very select, special relationships. The ultimate example of privacy is marital intimacy, where there's this exclusive relationship where two people choose to share something with each other. They only share with each other and with nobody else. And that creates the ultimate bond, the ultimate closeness. So there's a difference between something that's secret and something that's private. When speaking to children, even small children, about their bodies and about their private parts, it's not a secret. First of all, what's the secret? Everybody has these parts. We all know that it exists. It's not a secret. But it's private. What does it mean it's private? It means that it's not something that we share with everybody. So we remove the shame, but we don't remove the sense of privacy. Privacy actually promotes the opposite of secrecy and shame. Privacy promotes dignity, right? If a secret creates a feeling of shame, I'm dirty, I'm defective. Privacy promotes the opposite. feeling of dignity, self-respect. I have something special, something that I keep private. It's not on display for the world. It's special. You know, in Hebrew, the word for holiness, we translate it in English as holiness, is kedusha. That's the noun, holiness. But really, more accurately, it means separateness. Why does holiness mean separateness? Because the Torah concept of holiness is that which is set apart. Something that is ordinary, that's every day, is mundane. Something that's set apart for an exclusive special use is holy. So, for instance, you would say, that's a holy book, right? You have, like, let's say, a Torah book. That's a holy book. And therefore, it's set apart for an exclusive special purpose, meaning to say, you know, you might, you guys probably don't know what a phone book is, but in my day, we had phone books, right? You would use a phone book as a booster seat for a toddler. There was only 2 uses for phone books when they had them, okay? Because if we really needed to look up a number, we'd call 411 and pay the quarter, you know, for information. But the phone books, you'd use it either for a toddler's booster seat at the table, or to prop up air conditioner window unit. Those are the uses of a phone book. Now, that's not what it's made for, but it's okay. You could use it for whatever it works for, because it's not holy. But if you would take a Torah book, take a Chumash, and use it, God forbid, to prop up an air conditioner or for a booster seat, that's a misappropriation. Why? Because it's holy. Why? Because holy means set apart, exclusive, designated. So in that sense, it makes sense, by the way, why we say that the reproductive organs are holy. Why do we say it's holy? It's like euphemistic talk? No. Literally, because it is set apart. Because the private parts are designated for a special usage. And even though it's possible to misappropriate them and use them for other things, and it would technically work, practically you could do it, but it wouldn't be in line with the purpose of those body parts. It would be a misappropriation. They are holy, so we leave them for their exclusive special use for which they were designed. And concepts like this you could teach even to small children, and certainly to children who are older and becoming aware of their bodies and having these questions on their own and naturally wanting to know about differences between boys and girls and things like that. Obviously, we don't tell them everything all at once. Obviously, there's a sense of modesty. You have to have age-appropriate discussions. See, one of the things is, a lot of parents want to have the talk about, the birds and the bees, I guess is the old way of calling it. But, they want to have that talk about human sexuality. Here's what I want to tell you, though, my friends. It's not a talk. It is a series of talks. If you feel that you're going to do it as a one-shot deal in one talk, then either you're going to end up saying way too much for that child or way too little for that child. Either it was way too much because you're just going to tell them everything all at once because that's it. This is my one shot. Or you can tell them way too little because you'll tell them whatever they can handle now, but then they're never going to update it. You'll never update it later. No, it's a series of talks. And when the shame is removed and the child feels comfortable talking with the parents as they have these questions, then you'll be able to update it carefully and delicately and not to tell them too much all at once. But that's only when we remove the shame from it and the possibility for an ongoing dialogue exists. So it's not a one-time thing. If you're thinking that you're going to have this talk one time and get it out of the way and never have to do it again, that's a fundamental error in the approach to this matter. It's not a one-time conversation. It is you positioning yourself in your child's life as the go-to person, the safe person for talking about these things. Okay. Just one other thing in this realm, in this area, and that is sometimes especially when we talk about older kids, they sometimes, God forbid, are already pulled in. Let's say it got to that point where you're thinking that you have a child, a teenager, let's say, maybe even they're not even supposed to have a device, but they have access to technology somehow. And in this, you're not a bad parent if your child has a device against your will. It's one of the realities of today. When you have a better bond with them, then you have a better chance of talking them out of it. But don't think like, oh, if I'd only laid down the law and been more assertive and more made the rules stronger, then they wouldn't dare do this. Because the reality is, you have homes that are run very, very, ship shape, and the kids go off and they get their own devices on their own. It's just, they do it secretly. So don't fault yourself, but let's talk about productively. What do? You have a kid, an older kid, let's say a teenager, and it's like, okay, I already know what he's doing. Maybe even they have two devices. That's a common thing, like the phone that you get to see, and then the secret phone that, where everything else is happening. So here's the thing. You're not going to win this battle by calling someone out. Again, the whole concept of shame. Shame is counterproductive here. You're going to make somebody feel bad. A teenager who's already feeling probably extremely self-conscious, just in general, but especially self-conscious about their sexuality. And then you're going to call them out for this, and then it becomes this thing that they feel bad about. And then they have to basically live up to it. Oh, I guess I am bad. And I've seen this so many, many times, where a good kid, like a sweet, wholesome kid who wants to do good things, and in this one area, there's this strong pull. The Hashem created us, the Creator made us with a strong interest in this, a strong desire in this area. So it is a strong pull for many people. So you have a sweet kid who wants to do good things, but he's weak in this area and he's being pulled in. And then he gets called out for it. He feels like absolute garbage. And then what does he have to do? There's this cognitive dissonance. Am I a good person or am I a bad person? And what happens is he has to somehow figure out how to resolve this thing. So he says, oh, I must be a bad person. And I've seen it time and time again, where all of a sudden, all of the good things that this kid used to be very passionate about, he'll just write them off and say, oh, no, that was when I was younger. No, I'm not into that anymore. I want to become like this, and just completely transform his identity, completely transform even how he looks, how he dresses, how he talks. And it's so tragically unnecessary. It's so tragically unnecessary. And the way to avoid it is by allowing the child, and I would say the same thing for adults, by the way, to allow them the paradox. The paradox of saying, this is something that I'm struggling with, but I don't have to lower everything else about me to fit that in order to no longer feel guilt, to feel the conflict or the tension. In other words, having permission to live with the tension between where I'd like to be and where at some moments I really am. But if you don't allow a child the ability to live with that tension, or you don't even tell them there's such a concept, so then what happens is they just take everything and just pull it down to align it with the type of person they imagine is the kind of person who consumes that type of media. And like I said, it's tragically unnecessary. You could explain to them that this area has a very strong pull and very, very good people who care about spirituality, and they care about right and wrong, and they care about all types of lofty aspirations. And at the same time, they have human impulses that can be triggered, and they become pulled into those things at times. It doesn't make it okay. It's not saying that go ahead, it's off to the races and just do whatever you want. But what it is saying is you can live with the dichotomy. You can live with that tension. That tension doesn't have to become so formidable that you say, okay, that's it. The only way to get rid of the tension is just to, if you can't beat them, join them, and throw yourself into being the kind of person that you imagine is the kind of person who does these things. Follow what I'm saying? So, okay, let me just recap here. Remove the shame. There's a big difference between something that's secret and something that's that's private. Allow your child to talk to you repeatedly as an ongoing discussion. Inform your child, if they're already at this stage, that they don't have to throw themselves into that completely. It's okay to say, there's an area of my life that I'm struggling with where my own standards are higher than my current behavior. A lot of children don't know about that. A lot of adults don't know about that. That my own standards are higher than my current behavior. They don't know about that. So what do they just do? They just say, oh, my standards must actually be whatever my current behavior is. Okay? And yeah, the main thing is that this is a normal part of the human experience. Like I said, Hashem gave us a very strong desire in these areas. Ultimately, like I was saying before, the private parts of a person are the holiest parts because it has a designated purpose. And one of the reasons Hashem gave us such a powerful desire in those areas is to give us an ability to really apply ourselves to that area when it's done in the proper way. So you do want to tell your child in an age-appropriate way that, you know, we're not telling you that there's no place for this part of the human experience. We're just saying there's a very special place within the human experience for this part of ourselves. And that there's a strong pull to not make it special, but and we may be more successful on some days than other days in maintaining the specialness. But even in days when we fail to maintain the specialness, we can retain our standards and know that what we would ideally like to be the way that we behave. Because we know that that's the right thing, and we know that's the way that Hashem designed us to be. Okay, that's just to get the conversation started. Main thing is, stay calm, breathe. Definitely don't panic, because your shock will just, like I told you before, the most counterproductive thing is the shame. So, it obviously, many cases, it's very shocking for a parent, but you got to calm down first before you talk to your child, because if you're all appalled, that's only going to promote shame and then secrecy and then all of the vicious cycle that we described earlier. Okay, so look, rely on Hashem. Hashem is your partner in raising this child. You're not doing this alone. You're doing this in partnership with the Infinite One. Take a breath, get your grounding, get your stability, and show up for your kid and listen and mostly listen and offer some sober, non-hysterical, tolerant, compassionate, realistic perspective to what it's like being a human being. And God willing, it'll all work out. It'll all be good.